Hello, and welcome to another episode of Thoroughly Thriving, where we're putting human back in human capital solutions. On today's episode, we're going to hear from an industry leader where they're sharing their thoughts, feedback, and perspective on what's happening in today's world of work. Well, let's stay tuned and perk our ears up for another exciting episode. Welcome to another episode of Thoroughly Thriving. And on today's episode of Thoroughly Thriving, we're joined by someone who sits at the intersection of innovation, communication, and collaboration in the life sciences world, Andrew Goldstein. So a little bit about Andrew, audience. He's a senior conference producer and multimedia editor at the Conference Forum, where he leads the creation and execution of some of the industry's most respected events, including the Chief Medical Officer Summit 360, where we met last month, and the Immuno-Oncology 360 Summit, and the PODD, which stands for Partnership Opportunities in Drug Delivery Conference. But Andrew works together to bring together thought leaders, researchers, executives, and patient advocates from across the biotech and pharmaceutical sectors to spark meaningful dialogue and accelerate innovation. But he's just not a guy that's behind the scenes. Andrew is a master storyteller who helps shape how vital scientific conversations are shared, digested, and certainly amplified. His ability to curate content that resonates with both emerging biotech leaders and established industry giants makes him a key voice in the ecosystem of life sciences events and media. So we're really excited to dive into Andrew's journey, hear what trends he's tracking across biotech and healthcare, and learn how he keeps collaboration and curiosity at the core of everything he does. So welcome to the show, Andrew.
Thank you very much, Darren. Very happy to be here. Thank you very much, Sean. I just wanted to note that Kate Woda, my colleague, is the one who runs the IO360 conference.
Oh, thank you. Thank you for the clarification. Appreciate that. We'll have to certainly connect with Kate down the road as we get more involved. Thank you. Well, we're excited to have you on. Sean and I were eagerly looking forward to learning more about your background. And Andrew, when we met and leading up to the conference that we helped sponsor last month in Boston, it was apparent to me that you put a lot of focus on bridging innovation and collaboration. And so what I was able to infer that your work at the conference forum brings together professionals from pharma, biotech, and healthcare sectors. But Andrew, what strategies have you found most effective in fostering meaningful collaborations among these diverse stakeholders?
Thank you very much, Darren. I really think it starts with being mission driven, and I'm really blessed to work for a company that is mission driven, founded by Valerie Bowling and Meredith Sands, who are both incredibly mission driven, and pretty much everything at the company is evaluated based on mission. And for the CMO Summit specifically, for the pod conference specifically, and really for all of our events, that collaboration is key in the mission. I know that Thorough Group has its own mission, and you speak about integrity, ethics, expertise, dependability, and accountability. And for us, if it's the CMO Summit, I think about creating a community to support CMOs in all aspects of their role. And if we're talking about community from the beginning, that means that first marketing piece is about community, that first research call is about community, the event is about community, and that last email that we send out after the event with the recap is all about community. That really sets the tone throughout the entire experience about collaboration and innovation in this space, because this is a space of innovation. And I think that it really boils down to one attribute and one skill that I think that we can all be working on. The attribute is humility. I think that the event is not based on what I personally find is the most interesting thing or the least interesting thing. It's really about speaking to the audience of CMOs, CEOs, CFOs, people from pharma, biotech, healthcare, executive search firms, CROs, other service providers, on what are the trends, what are the topics that they are interested in, and then being able to listen with empathy and listen actively, and then synthesizing it and hopefully putting together something that the audience will appreciate and that has that tone where people feel from the beginning that they can come in, ask questions, learn, be vulnerable, and collaborate.
That's great. Yeah, thank you. I mean, I certainly sensed that and felt that attending the CMO 360 Summit. So thank you for setting that atmosphere and that environment that's conducive to bridging innovation and certainly collaboration.
Yeah, it's interesting, Andrew, when Darren came back from the summit and was talking to me a little bit about just some of his observations around who you are and how well you ran the event. You know, Darren and I have been to many conferences in our lives and we have experienced ones that are well run and but also ones that really have a high level of engagement, right? And I think that that is the ultimate, differentiator in an entire sea of events, conferences, especially the ones that you're leading, with executives who have other options and have a million other things on the calendar throughout the year, to really set things apart. We've seen an evolution over the last few years, leading up into COVID, and then ultimately, I think COVID was a big amplifier in the shift toward virtual events. Also playing a big part in the ecosystem. How have you intentionally adapted some of the conference formats and the ways that you put them together to really maintain the level of engagement that is obvious is still occurring, just even based on our personal experience? How do you really work to maintain that engagement level and really deliver value to attendees to come in person?
So I'm going to date myself here. My first conference was actually a virtual conference. I joined the conference forum in 2019. I attended two in-person conferences, and at the second of those, in late February, Carl June wore a mask and said, "You're all going to be doing this in a couple of weeks," and that's what we all did. And my first conference that I ran was virtual. The second one that I ran was virtual. And in 2021, ran a hybrid CMO summit where half the attendees were in person and half were virtual. And I don't think that virtual conferences have gotten to a point where they are a good substitute for in person conferences. The ability to run into someone that you might not have known and that you can have a conversation with, the ability to have that handshake, the ability to have someone speak on stage and then be able to walk right up to them afterwards and have a conversation that doesn't yet exist in the virtual world. Maybe when I think it's more of a when than an if, when AR and VR become widely spread, maybe we'll all have conferences in the metaverse and be able to do it that way. But I don't think that we're there yet. I think that the ability to be in person, to have those natural conversations, meet people naturally, is really more fosters collaboration more. But I will say that it happened to be around the same time in 2020. We planned on launching newsletters, and we launched quarterly newsletters. In 2023, we launched a new website, and now we publish articles on a bi-monthly basis. We have podcasts, we have webinars, both live and pre-recorded. And those are ways to use virtual technology or internet technology to really support the community throughout the year. That I think it's amazing that we have such a great community off of a 2-day event, whether it's CMO, whether it's Pod, whether it's my colleagues' events at IO or DFarm or some of the others. But that in addition to that, we can now really engage people throughout the year with editorials, with podcasts, with webinars, like the one that we're on right now, and really support the community. And that again just brings it back to community and being a mission-driven organization that focuses on community and collaboration.
I agree with you completely. And community is hard to find, but when you find it, where you really feel like it's a place you get value from, it's not something you want to let go of quickly. Another thing that we noticed, around our involvement in the CMO Summit was that there's really a recurring theme of this patient centricity focus where the patients are still in the middle of everything that you're doing. And I know us connecting from your background, I think probably plays somewhat of a part in that. How do you intentionally ensure that the patient's perspectives are still really well integrated into the discussions that you have within these conferences when it comes to drug development or delivery or other things like that? Does your background play a part in that also?
I would like to think that my background plays a part in it, my father being a pediatrician and myself not going to medical school, but thinking about it. But I also think that this goes back to company mission. We have another conference called Patients as Partners in Clinical Research. We have a US version and an EU version because the two systems are different. The US one is run by Kate Woda, and the EU one is run by Valerie Bowling. And we're all here to support patients. Everything that we're doing here to support patients. If you're in biotech, if you're in pharma, if you're in healthcare, the end goal is to help patients. If it's about delivering a drug in a different way, it's to reduce patient burden. If you're running a clinical trial and you want patients to participate, you want to figure out what are endpoints that they care about, what is a clinical trial format that they will be included in, where they don't need to go to a clinic for 18 hours 3 days in a row. If you want them to participate, how can you share data back with them? And really, if you focus on the patient, then everything will turn out okay. I think I interviewed a CFO, I want to say in 2021 or maybe 2020, and he said that biotechs, their job is to be the steward of investor capital, and the best way to use investor capital and to give a return on investment is to focus on the patient, and that's where CFOs and CMOs can collaborate. And so just talk to patients. Just ask them what they want from preclinical to clinical to late stage to commercial to post commercialization. Just talk to patients. The other thing that I wanted to say is that you need to advocate internally. Often CMOs are the only MDs in their companies or the only MDs in their C-suite. That's not always the case, but most of the times it is. And usually patient engagement and patient recruitment and patient centricity reports up to them. And so the CFO is going to make a decision, but it's your job as the CMO to advocate internally for the patient. There's no one else in the room who's going to. I mean, hopefully there will be, but the buck stops with you in terms of advocating, and then hopefully you can accept the opinion or the decision that your CEO makes with grace, and hopefully your advocacy will help with patient centricity throughout the development process.
Yeah. Wow. I love that perspective. And I think even as you and I were talking about some of your initial work, in just even some of your writing work, crossing over and understanding that perspective and understanding how it all fits together. And I love your perspective about the patient being the central piece, because I think we all know that that's the case. But if we don't often remind ourselves, sometimes it's, you'd forget to look at the horizon of where you're headed to, it's like we all get distracted in different ways, in different places and things. So thank you for that reminder. And I know that it's at the heart of everything that you do. I mean, it's not just people talk about some things being vision statements or being a core value, but then you never see them. I love how this is something that's out in front of everything that you guys do. And the work that we do in supporting companies who are running clinical trials and things as well really lead a lot of initiatives or focuses that bring together a diverse professional set. And same thing with your conferences as well, where you have folks that are a variety of backgrounds and skills, and where they're from throughout the world. And is there any leadership lessons or experiences that you have picked up that have really influenced your approach to building the conferences, but also even just leading people through intentionally throughout the experience?
I was wondering if I should how religious I should be in my response, but I think that throughout my life, whether it's my parents, grandparents, role models, I've always been attracted to the servant leader. That a leader of an organization, a leader in a situation, is more beholden to the rest of the group, not less so. It's not a position necessarily to order people around. It's a position where one is responsible for taking in everything. And then sometimes there is some ordering around, but hopefully not. Within my own organization, I see myself more as a conductor. If you imagine it as an orchestra with the sales team, with the marketing team, with the production team, with the logistics team. But or if for the more scientifically minded, maybe like a central node that different things are being communicated through to. And so again, if I'm going to be speaking with CMOs and CEOs and CFOs, if I'm going to be speaking with scientists from the device side, scientists from the formulation side, patients about what is important to them, I can do the same thing within the team. Ask my sales team what's important to them, ask my marketing team what's important to them, ask my logistics team what's important to them, and to come at it with an open-mindedness to ultimately, again, a decision has to be made. And I think that in what I hear about from my CMOs is that they come from academia, where it's very much the ego has to be what's in charge, publish or perish, to being part of a team where you really need to advocate, but also accept opinions gracefully. And so I hope that my colleagues, you can ask them, but I hope that I listen to them and they feel like they are listened to, and then synthesizing and making a decision to the best of my ability with the guidance of my directors.
Yeah, that's great, Andrew. Yeah, it sounds like your approach is something that we subscribe to as well, since we support um, really people at the C level, and then those that per se are in the trenches of drug development. And the approach that we take here at Thorough Group is really situational leadership and situational management, right? And it's not a one size fits all solution. So it sounds like the adaptability, the approach, the tailored approach, leading from the front, has really served you well. And I and I saw that once again firsthand of the community that's been cultivated specifically within the CMO 360 Summit. So great job to you and the team. And we also subscribe to servant leadership. We like to go first and certainly lead from the front in a good way. And it's been told to me over the years, and Andrew, I've shared on the podcast, previous podcast, that I've estimated in my career that I've worked over 3,000 companies. I think that's a bit conservative, which is wild to think. But what I found is there's a delineation between managers and leaders. And managers in my career and the companies that we've worked with like to light fires underneath people. And that can help when you need to ramp up rather quickly or reach a milestone or complete a data set or lock a database, whatever the case is. But leaders, that's more sustaining. They light fires within. And that's where the passion really is amplified. So I see that within your team. Um, Andrew, we're curious, given your experience of being involved since 2019 of your first virtual event to how that's evolved, changed, and really kind of been shaped over the last 6 years for you. Um, in your community, the people that you lock arms with and support, there's a lot of trends that are happening. And I think over the last 24 to even 36 months, it's been even more paramount of being at least attuned to what's happening from a trend perspective. I can tell you from a daily perspective, we get that question asked to us. What are you guys seeing out there? You work with such a diverse portfolio of clients. And I say this tongue in cheek, but oftentimes I say my crystal ball is cloudy on the best day, but I'll share with you what information I do have. But looking ahead, um, what emerging trends do you foresee between pharmaceutical and biotech companies, and how should professionals out there really prepare to adapt to these changes that you're forecasting?
Yeah. So similarly, if I had a crystal ball and could tell the future, I would have invested very differently in 2020. Um, that being the case, I was thinking about it, and at the conference, we spoke about there being some trends in terms of complexity in clinical trials, in terms of ROI there. Obviously, there are financial challenges in the space happening currently, but we also heard from Michael Myers of HC Wainwright that pharma potentially has, I think that he said $750 billion. I think he said $750 billion that could potentially be deployed for collaborations and for acquisitions, partnerships. And in my other conference, the POD conference, Partnership Opportunities in Drug Delivery, it's really all about partnerships. And I speak to people there, and people are very interested in partnerships in different spaces. And so, and we also know that there are patent cliffs that are happening. I think in 2029 is going to be when it really starts hitting. And so it sounds to me like there is going to be some kind of potential for more partnerships. I don't know when exactly that's going to start. I think that we're all hoping it starts sooner rather than later. Um, and so, from my perspective, it's again about listening, again about being part of a community. There's content out there. I know that I've interviewed people from Search and Evaluate teams, and those articles are up. I know that we had at the CMO Summit a panel about BD and M&A, and we had 3 people on that panel who had been part of companies that were acquired within the last 12 months. These people exist. Obviously, the pharma companies that are looking to acquire have this stuff, have this information on their website. It's very accessible, and they have contact information of people that you can ask. And so you can definitely ask people within your own community who may have been part of these conversations, may have gone through deals, ask people within the pharma companies, what is their partnership philosophy? What kind of data are people interested in? What kind of technologies are people interested in? And just listening and asking, I think, is the best way for you to set yourself up, where whatever company you're a part of, whatever role you're in, to know what to do. What is that roadmap to have that conversation, in terms of those collaborations. In terms of CMO trends, I'd love to hear what you experience. But I've sort of experienced two things happening concurrently. We obviously have the regular CMOs, but I've seen more specialization among CMOs. So CMOs becoming a CMO CDO split, a chief development officer, chief medical officer split. I've seen more chief medical officers take on more and more and more responsibilities. If they're a cell and gene CMO, taking on CMC, and maybe becoming even like a head of R&D and going everything from translation all the way through to phase 3 trials. And then I've also seen the separation. I've seen more companies looking for fractional CMOs, part-time CMOs, consultant CMOs, or something of that sort. And so I sort of feel like we're having these two diverging trends: the CMO who takes on everything and becomes the head of R&D, and the CMO that sort of splits off into two roles in the company, or three roles in the company with some fractional elements there. And I'd love to see where this goes. And hopefully, everyone can come to the CMO Summit and discuss.
Absolutely. Yeah.
That's great. Yeah, I love that, Andrew. I think it's a very, very on point perspective. We're seeing a lot of the same thing as we work with companies that, they're really making considerations for the roadmap, what's the best fit for their organization, what's the best fit around their personnel, and all of those sorts of things. Um, I'd love to throw one little curveball question as we, start to land the plane here a little bit. Tell us a little bit about, Andrew, what's your next conference that's coming up on your roadmap ahead, and what would be the real targeted audience for you?
October 27th, 28th, we have the POD conference, Partnership Opportunities in Drug Delivery. And the whole point of that conference is to facilitate partnership opportunities within the drug delivery space. So we have a very structured event where pharma companies present on what their partnering philosophies are, what are their scouting interests, what kind of partnerships they're looking for in drug delivery. We have drug delivery companies, everything from university spinouts through to very established companies sharing presentations with new data and what they're looking for in terms of partnerships. We have panel discussions on trends in the drug delivery space. We have, what am I missing? I think that's most of it. We have featured speakers as well, obviously, and keynote speakers as well. We have a payer panel about how payers and how other people who might be involved in reimbursement might be thinking about where drug delivery fits into getting on a formulary or getting reimbursed. And so really trying to focus holistically on drug delivery and specifically on facilitating those partnerships, which sort of similar to the CMO Summit. Really, again, come to the event, meet with people, text with people, email people, meet with them in person, connect with them after the event as well. And so, this is so not a zero-sum game. We can all win. I mean, thank God, not thank God. There are. Every one of us is a patient on planet Earth. Every single one of us is a patient, and we can all work together to make everyone's lives easier, reduce the burden for everyone, and just come in and partner and collaborate.
I think that's great. And we'll put some in the show notes for how people can get more information about that conference. And, I think it is, as you mentioned before, really probably one of the major trends we will see over the next, 18 to 24 months in the industry is more partnership, more collaboration, a differentiated use of capital that's not always going to be, VC backed or, other options, we're going to continue to see, especially given the dynamic shifts in grant availability and everything else along the way. I mean, there's just a lot of moving parts and pieces. But as you noted, at the CMO Summit, that there really is a war chest is the wrong word, but kind of in terms of available funding for companies moving forward through the partnership, avenue. So thank you for sharing that. We'll put that into the notes.
Thank you for inviting me onto the podcast.
Absolutely. And Andrew, the best way for people to get a hold of you, I know Sean just referenced this, reach you on LinkedIn. Is there any other um, format or modality for people to get a hold of you to learn more about how they can partner?
For sure. So I'm addicted to LinkedIn. So please feel free to reach out to me there. I think it's linkedin.com/Andrew Margavi. And then the two conferences, the CMO Summit, you can see that website is cmo360.org. And for the pod conference, it's drug-delivery.org. And looking forward to seeing you there.
Perfect. Well, we will certainly incorporate that into the show notes. Well, we have thoroughly enjoyed this episode of Thoroughly Thriving. Andrew, thank you for joining us. And for our audience, please continue to subscribe, like, and share. We absolutely appreciate your support. But we're only able to do this if we continue to work as one and win as one. See you on the next episode of Thoroughly Thriving.
Thank you for joining us today for another great episode of Thoroughly Thriving. If you enjoyed today's episode, please feel free to share it with those in your world. If you'd like to learn more about the Thorough Group, please go to thoroughgroup.com. And remember that we will all remain thoroughly thriving if we continue to work as one and win as one.